First of all, welcome to our October program. It's going to be another great one with Vladimir. Before everybody was admitted, we were talking about how often Vladimir has presented in front of the PHSNE membership. And it's like 4 times. And as Dana mentioned, it's always one of the most popular ones as far as sharing the Zoom. And that's probably no surprise. If you heard Vladimir before, lectures get a lot of interest. A couple of things. We had our board meeting today. We did talk about the election. I asked for an update on that. I'm not sure most of you understand how that election works with PHSNE. We have 3 PHSNE members who are not up for re-election or running for a board. That is a nomination committee, and they go out and they put together a slate of candidates. And that slate, from what I understand, it's just about complete. And we will be sending out that slate with a ballot at the November snapshot, so you can vote and send that back in. So I thought I'd let you know that. Also, the other thing that came up at the board meeting is we are really seriously thinking of having probably 2, maybe even 3 in-house meetings next calendar year. And we do realize that Zoom meetings are very popular. There's some really good reasons why we should continue doing that. Of course, we get to hear from people and see people from where we are. So we're going to start looking around, I think, at venues that are really set up for Zoom meetings, probably some hotel or something like that. So, but one of the board members suggested that I asked you folks, people who are listening, whether or not they would be in favor of an in-house meeting. And I said I would do that. So if you do have any thoughts on that and what it maybe should consist of, could you please email me at President, John Felix, President at PHSNE.org, just president at PHSNE.org, and I will get that email. One last thing, I want to give you an update that we are still working on a 2023 journal. It's going to be a commemorative type a lot of pictures about all the stuff that we've done for the last 50 years. We're going to have a section on, for example, the journal, a section on programs, a section on field trips. And one section I think is going to be, fairly small, just a couple of pictures. But Jack Billington is with us, and Dana and I spent some time on Zoom talking with Jack and Dick Bolt, who are charter members. And we asked them some questions. I'm not going to tell you what they are right now, but both Jack and Dick Bolt were really interesting in giving their perspective on, especially the formative years of PHSNE. So I think you're going to enjoy that piece when we get that done. And that's about it. I'm going to turn it back to Dana so that she can introduce our speaker. Dana?
Thanks, John. Hi, all. I'm Dana G. I'm the program coordinator for PHSNE. And before we welcome our speaker, Vladimir Khazan, a few announcements. You probably saw when you signed on that the screen is being recorded for YouTube archiving. So if you are viewing this presentation, I would recommend speaker view. If you go up to the top right corner and select speaker, I usually choose that for the main part of the meeting, and then when we all have questions at the end, we can go back to gallery. So if you are new to Zoom, if you move your mouse to the bottom of the screen, you'll see on the left the mute. Please stay muted. It's the microphone icon with the line. You want the line through it during the presentation. If you have questions, please type them into the chat, which you will also see. It's a little speech balloon at the bottom. Type them into the chat and we will relay them to Vladimir at the end of the presentation. And Yeah, I think that's it for housekeeping. So, the Gelveta camera, which later became the Sport, was designed and built by Soviet photography and cinematography enthusiast A.O. Gelgar in the 1930s. It is the earliest known production 35mm SLR camera ever to be built. Vladimir will talk about the invention and manufacturing of the camera, offer biographical background information about Gelgar, and explain how the camera made its way to the customers. Vladimir Khazan, a Russian-born photography enthusiast, has had a varied career as an engineer, medical professional, and professor. He earned a master's degree in mechanical manufacturing engineering from Riga Polytechnic Institute and worked at the gigantic VEF plant in Riga, Latvia. He worked as an engineer in the US until 2003, a cardiovascular sonographer until 2007, a professor until 2020 when COVID hit, and he recently returned to a position as a mechanical engineer. His passion for photography began when he was 12 years old and continues to this day. Vladimir has presented for PHSNE multiple times on different cameras, and he has been a PHSNE member for about 10 years. Vladimir, take it away, it's all yours.
Hello, everybody. I am Vladimir Khazan, and this is the hero of today's presentation. The hero's name is Camera Sport. Camera Sport. First of all, well, I heard John's announcement about in-house meetings. Well, I think it would be very good in addition to our Zoom meetings, because our Zoom meetings give possibilities and opportunities for many people to see our presentations and listen to us and participate in our presentations. For example, now I see Photographic Historical Society from Canada with such a wonderful picture on it that looks like an astronaut. So that's my opinion, if it could be counted towards anything. Okay, so we can begin today, and first of all, I will answer the question that Dana usually asks: why sport? Why Exacta? Why Zeiss? Sport, well, number one is that number one answer to this question is that sport is a continuation of the Exacta conversation, because when I was talking about Exacta, I spoke about sport camera as well. But another reason is this. Let me show you this book. It's published in Soviet Union in 1963. And this is the book where I learned from about this camera for the first time in my life. I learned everything about this camera from this book. My father taught me photography, and he used this book. So this is kind of Bible for me. So let us begin, and let me share the screen. Let me share the screen. It's here, share. And here we go. All right. So on this slide, you can see the Camera Sport. And you can see the note that it was designed by Alexander Gelgar. His patronymics is Oscar. So for that reason, that letter O is there. It's not, it doesn't stand for organization. It's his patronymics. Alexander Oscar Gelgar. This presentation was possible because I got the camera I just showed you. I can show it to you again if you can see it. But it would not be possible without this person. And this person is Cyril Khazan. He gave it to me as a birthday gift. He is my very good friend and possibly a relative. So let us begin. This camera is SLR camera, single lens reflex camera. And people switched or were switching to SLR cameras, single lens reflex cameras, because of all the other cameras existing those days had parallax issues, parallax problem. What I'm talking about this kind of cameras. For example, these are rangefinders, right? And this is the problem that exists in rangefinders, because this is the taking lens, photographing lens, and this is the viewfinder. We are looking at one thing, but we are photographing totally different stuff. See? Also, that same issue exists in twin lens cameras, where we are using top lens for focusing and the lower lens for photographing. And if you will take a closer look at this schematic here, the top part of this twin lens camera looks exactly like camera obscura for painting, right? The mirror, the lens, and the eye, right? So this is one lens, this is another lens, and the closer the subject is to the camera, the rougher parallax error is. SLR cameras, single lens reflex cameras, do not have that problem, because the what we see is what we get, and that is possible because of the mirror, which gives the reflex portion of the name for SLR, the abbreviation. So mirror shoots the light exactly directly to the photographer's eye. And as an example of SLR camera, I placed, of course, camera sport this time. All right, so let's continue, and let's think, how old is the idea of single lens reflex camera? Everybody knows that photography began with the camera obscura, right? Somebody recommended to start with pyramids, but pyramids were not built by the Egyptians, and we don't know who built them. So we don't know whether or not they had camera obscura those days. So for that reason, I'm starting with Leonardo da Vinci. Leonardo da Vinci had his own camera obscura, but he did not use it for painting. He used it only to study eye physiology. But the other people who I will be talking about, and they were very interested in using camera obscura, they said they added some elements to camera obscura. And the first one was the lens. So Giovanni Battista della Porta added the lens. Another person named Daniel Barbaro noticed that the diaphragm adds sharpness to the image. And another person, see, we are coming closer and closer to our days. We're already in 17th century. So a professor of math in Germany added the mirror. He added the mirror to camera obscura. So how everything was possible to install just like this. And let's think about it. What are we having here now? We have lens, we have mirror. So single lens. Remember twin lens camera? How the light was going through the lens, hit the mirror and went up to the photographer's eye. That's exactly what we have here. So for that reason, well, you can smile, but it is an SLR, right? Single lens and reflex. Another thing that this camera sport incorporates is 35mm film. 35mm film was introduced to movie taking by Thomas Edison and one of his one of the participants of his lab, William Dixon. In 1909, 35mm film became the preferred choice and was adopted as a standard for cameras, for movie cameras. But in 4 years, and please remember this number, 4 years later, in Germany, another person created a camera which was using 35mm film. You probably know the name, Oscar Barnack. He created Leica, and that Leica camera was the first one to use 35mm film for photography, not for movie. Okay, and after he created his prototypes and they were tested, and company Lights started marketing the cameras under the name Leica. Leica is a combination of Lei and CA from the word camera. By the way, in 2012, yes, 2012, one of the prototypes that Oscar Barnack built in 1913 was sold on an auction, ready for the number, $3 million. 2012. Okay, so that's pretty interesting number and very interesting event. So let's continue. 4 years, again, 4 years, remember? From 25, 4 years later, will be 29. And this is what exactly happened. This is Alexander Gelgar. And in 1929, he created this wonderful camera. The reason why he started building it, why the idea hit his head, because he lived in Asia, and one of his friends, a professor of biology, gave him a Leica to just to shoot. He borrowed it to him. So he found out, Gelgar found out that the shutter did not work very well at those high temperatures in Asia, right? About Caspian Sea. it was very hot, and usually it is very hot temperatures over there. So he decided to build a camera that would incorporate metal shutter and 35mm film, and it would be SLR, single lens reflex camera. So there will be no issues with parallax. And that happened in before 1929, because 1929 he already came up with the sample. He was born, I kept saying Asia, 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 but take a look where he was born, in Turkmenistan. Turkmenistan. It's a very, very close to Iran or Persia, if it was as it was named those days. So when he was 9, he built his own camera, as you can read here. I'm not going to read it. So it was his first camera. Another camera was built later in 29, but before that, in 1925, he made a movie projector. He created a movie projector and built it. And he went to Iran to demonstrate movies. It was possible those days because Turkmenistan was joined into Soviet Union in 1925. And the border was not that strict as it is now. So he went there, and at one of flea markets, he bought a lens. The lens was named Stellar. It was pretty fast for those days lens, 3.5, and 75mm was lens's focal distance. He used it in his camera. Okay. Then he decided that when Turkmenistan, those days already 29 and 30, Turkmenistan was joined to Soviet Union, so he decided that his camera deserves big attention, and he went to Moscow. He went to Moscow and he spoke with the head of Committee of Cinematography of USSR. That office figured out that the camera is very valuable and has a lot of potentials, but unfortunately in Moscow those days there was no facility where they could start mass production of that camera. For that reason, he was directed to Leningrad, right here, Leningrad, and he went there, and he spoke with administration of very big plant. Nowadays it's called LOMO, Leningrad Optical Mechanical Association. Those days it was GOMS, State Optical Mechanical Plant, SOMP. All right, and now the 34, look, from 30 to 34, it's another 4 years. This year became very significant in biography of Gelgar and camera sport. Because at SOMP, they refused, actually, they physically refused to build the camera. He asked another institution to start to help him with production. That was Military Electrotechnical Academy. They had their own labs. They were not just an academy. They were not only academic, but they also had their own lab, and they built some cameras. They did some experiments. So they agreed to start making cameras, Gelgar's cameras. To say thank you to that academy, Gelgar named that camera Gelveta. Gel comes from his last name, Gelgar, G-E-L, and Veta stands for Military Electrotechnical Academy. V is for Russian name for military. That's why it's called Gelveta. The same year, magazine Soviet Photo, very influential magazine, showed Gelgar's 35mm camera. Look, this is the article. I understand not everybody can read Russian, but this is the picture of Gelveta, and this is the article from Soviet Photo. So Military Academy built a few cameras, and they wanted to test it, to test the cameras. For that reason, they asked people who participated in ski run. Ski run those days was proposed from Nerchinsk to Moscow. Nobody knows where Nerchinsk is, but I found it on the map and see where it is. Take a look. This is Nerchinsk. This is Mongolia, right here, right? So it's on Mongolian border between Soviet Union and Mongolia. And this distance, they made this distance in 74 working days. They spent more, but they actually were on skis 74 days. And they were making a lot of miles a day, 58 miles a day. Here they are, 5 people. And everybody carried a Gelveta. Not only carried, they took pictures, they photographed a lot. And Gelveta never failed. Why? Because it had metal shutter inside, and the temperatures were -40. -40 is the same on Celsius, by Celsius, and Fahrenheit. It's the same number. So they reached Moscow in February, and they left, I think, in November. That's how fast they made this distance on feet, on skis. 1934, again, the same year, Gelgar worked strictly on the cinematographic equipment. Why is that? Because he was very knowledgeable and skillful on making that equipment. And those days, it was a very big project to make a sound projector for the entire Soviet Union. And that project was, the curator for that project was the Minister of Heavy Machinery of Soviet Union. For that reason, Gelgar was not allowed to work on his camera, but instead he spent all the working time working on the projector. He, however, participated after work on his own time with no pay. He still participated, he still communicated with the designers who were working on his camera, and he gave some advices. Some of them were accepted, some of them were not, and as a result, the camera was simplified a lot. But in 1935, Soviet Photo made official presentation of the camera, and Gelgar, after finishing that movie projector project, he left that plant because he was not allowed to work on his camera. So the plant finished transformation for the camera to mass production, and they started making it, but they made it under a different name, under Sport. Now we have a family of the cameras. The family, the oldest member of the family is Gelveta, with the original frame 24 by 38 because of the lens that was it could serve bigger format. And now when it turned Sport, they used very good lens, Induster 10. Induster 10 is this lens. Everybody knows it. This is Induster 10. But if you will look closer, not sure if you can see that. Can you read what it says? No. It says Elmar. Right? It's Elmar. That lens was used on Leicas. So, but on Soviet cameras, it was the same lens. This camera is Fed, one of the first Soviet Feds, and you can see the same lens. It's collapsible, and it's the same lens, Induster 10. The same lens, Induster 10, is used for cameras Sport. The film transportation was from cassette to cassette, so one could load and unload camera on the open light, didn't have to go to a dark room. And they were original cassettes. I'll show you later the cassettes, and I will open this camera that I have now. But I can tell you now that by June of 1941, when the war came to Leningrad, about 20,000 cameras were made. And the Leningrad in June 41 was blocked by Nazis. There was no way to they could not take it, but they could not also leave from there. So they just closed a ring about around the city. The only way to the city was through the lake, Ladoga Lake, where trucks carried food and everything else for people under constant cannonade. About 6,000 people died during that blockade. Right, but in 1936, in Germany, an engineer, Karl Nuchterlein, designed a similar camera, and it was Exacta. It was Exacta. As I said before, I do not have Exacta Kine, the one he created. Kine stands for, it's a German transcription. It stands for Cine. Cine because it uses 35mm film, which was for cinematography, right? But this is Exacta, and this is how that Exacta Cine looked like. About this is much later camera. This is camera of made in 50s, right? So you can see all the levers here, and this is the access to view the shot, and this is the SLR 35mm camera created by Karl Nuchterlein.
Vlad,
Yes.
will you be showing the cameras under the other camera setup that you have, like when you stop sharing?
Yes, I will. I will.
Okay.
I will. Yep. I just don't want to do that because it takes time, and then switch back and forth. It's not convenient. All right. So the first prototype that he made, the company actually, IHG. Again, it's German pronunciation, IHG. The first prototype was displayed in 1936 in Camera Show. And the shutter was not metal, it was fabric. So it will not work as well as Gelgar's camera. However, the shutter was much better, from 12 seconds to 1,000. And it had also synchronization contact for flash. Okay. These are shots of Leningrad being bombed during World War II. And this picture shows how they were going to cemeteries to bury the family members. And this is a coupon for bread. They had only 50 grams of bread daily in Leningrad. So in these conditions, they definitely would not make cameras, right? It was not a good time for that. And let's take a look what happened in Germany. In Germany, Johann Steenbergen had to leave Germany and he chose USA because his wife was Jewish, and he had to run from Hitler. And he left his production in Germany, in Dresden, and Dresden was bombed by Allies. one of the bombs or several bombs hit the factory and it stopped working after that. It was destroyed. The engineer, the designer, who the author of Exacta Kine, Karl Nuchterlein, was drafted, and he was lost in action in Berlin. Of course, he's dead for now, right? So this is what happened. And if you would take a look, no, it's not here. These are my references, but I learned from other sources that Steenbergen and Gelgar passed away the same year, 1967. That's about it about the camera. So if you have questions, please ask questions. But now I will switch cameras, and I will show this camera how it was made. Okay. So this is the camera, and this is the lens, right? This is focusing, and focusing the lens, and this is the lens itself. It's an interchangeable lens. Of course, there is no other lenses to fit that bayonet because there was no time to build anything. Okay, so this handle, this is the only handle that actually does everything in the camera. It transports the film, turns up the shutter, and also sets the shutter speed. So right now I turned it on, and see the mirror over there, and it I just took a picture. Okay. Inside there is space for 2 cassettes. They're very special cassettes. They're very special cassettes, right? See this? Can you see it? Okay, so one of them even has a film on it. This is how Cyril gave it to me, with the film. Oh, luckily it's this one. See, even the film is on. So oh wow. Well, okay, it's different comparing to the cassettes that we have now for 35 millimeters, right? Because now we have the spoles have the little sticking out portions. Not now, not with this one. So this is the cassette, and the mechanism itself, take a look how it works, right? I will put it on B. So you will see that this is B, right? This is, you can see my fingers down there, right? So the camera still is in working condition. And I'm sure if I would load some film, I would get pictures. That's how it works. That's how the camera works. But the original Gelveta had stamped case. This is cast, right? And the entire case was to load the camera. You had to take that out, the entire mechanism you took out of the case. And it had a lot more access to the spools, and you could load the film much easier than now. But this is sport, this is classic sport, and collectors actually like to have this camera, and I feel very lucky that Cyril decided to give me this camera as a birthday gift. This is about it, and let me switch back to the other camera. No, not this one. This one. Yes. Okay. So I'm ready for your questions.
Thank you, Vlad. Before questions, let's unmute and give him a round of applause for an incredible presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it, man.
Well done, Vladimir.
All right.
Vladimir, how much is a camera like that worth?
That I do not know. A long time ago, you offered me $10, but it's not
No,
that.
but is there any record of any of them being sold?
Sorry?
Is there a record of any of them being sold?
I did not look, Paul.
Oh, okay.
All right. So this camera is, I think, made in 38. I have this book. It's a catalog of Soviet and Russian cameras, and it says it was about 1938. So I expected that question from you.
Gee, you wouldn't have been able to do the show if I bought it for $10.
Right, and I think I told you, yes, I would take the $10, but you won't get the camera.
Vlad,
Vladimir, I'm sorry.
who was going to ask a question?
I wanted to ask a question.
Sure.
So Vladimir, I understand it's kind of a revolutionary device, and I'm sorry I joined a little bit late. Maybe you covered that already in the beginning, but what is that leap, that revolutionary step that the inventors accomplished here in this camera? What was the innovation, the main one?
Sure. Before I will answer this question, I have to tell everybody, this is the person who gave it to me. So,
and I'm so glad I did, because I feel like it's in the right hands.
let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you, but I'm so glad I did.
Yeah, and thanks again. So the revolutionary step in this camera is that it combined, for the first time in the history of photography, SLR camera with 35mm film. Right? none of these subjects were revolutionary to that point of time, but putting them together
Together, okay,
is step.
I see, okay, thanks. So they were 35 millimeters was the smaller than the SLRs before. The SLRs, all the SLRs had larger frame.
Right, that they all used Eastman's roll film, and that they were different. Some of them were 35 millimeter, but that was 127, I believe, and not too many cameras used that that format.
I see. Thank you.
Sure.
Vladimir, what was there a change in the way they were manufacturing the film, or were they just using the exact same film that a cinematography camera would use?
There was a very little change, but it was a very significant change in the meantime, because before that 35 millimeter film was flammable, and a lot of there was a lot of situations when during the film demonstrations the projectors were put in fire, and for that reason they could not bring the movie projection process to places like hospitals and other places, other public places. When they changed it to non-flammable film, that changed a lot. So
So it went from nitrate to the acetate base.
right. Other than that, it's the same. I remember when I was about 10 years old, we were looking for old films because they were flammable and they burned very well. We made a lot of fun. With those films.
Any
Okay.
other questions? So you haven't taken photographs with it, or have you?
Say it again, I can't hear you.
You haven't taken photos with this camera yet, or have you?
Not yet. I'm going to, yes. I'm going to clean it because it's dusty and see how it works. Check it with the bad films. I have a lot of them. How it transports the film, how it works actually.
Mhm.
Going to test it with the bad film, and then maybe I will use good film, take pictures. It's my habit. When I get a new camera, I try to test it, whether it's working or not, how bad it is.
Maybe we can find a roll of bulk film for you. Current film.
It's 35 a pole in anywhere. I guess in your store we can bet we can bought a roll of film.
We may have some bulk film in the warehouse for you to use as a thank you.
Okay. All right. I would appreciate that. Thank you.
What was the marketing for this camera like? Who was the audience that they were trying to sell to?
Well, most of the information that I referred to was in Russian, and those days in Soviet Union, everything was growing, not like now. But people were more and more interested in progressive gadgets. right? So cameras were one of them, and there was a lot of people who were interested in photography. Photography was considered kind of highly interesting area, and not everybody had a camera. They were expensive, and for that reason, LOMO, LOMO, started producing cameras not so precise, not so good, but cheap and easy to handle. They were called cameras for kids, right? They most of them were plastic, not all of them, most of them, and they break very easily. They broke very easily, but based on that design, we built, well, somebody built stereo camera. I think I showed it long ago, when two cameras are put together 1-to-1, and it uses one film, and those cameras were total plastic. It fell. I have that camera. It fell from, I put it on the top of my bag, and the bag was on the shelf, so it fell off the bag to the shelf. It's about less than a foot height, and a piece of plastic broke off from that height, so it's not usable anymore, unfortunately. But I took a lot of stereo shots, and they were very good with that camera. Okay.
Anyone have any more questions for Vlad? Thank you for a wonderful presentation. Every October, I think you must do a presentation for us.
Yeah, I will, and I hope I will. But what about December, Dana?
John can tell us more about December. We're going to have a special presentation. Are you there, John?
Yes, I think I'll be making the presentation in December. As you know, it is our 50th year, and as I mentioned in the introduction, that Ron Polito, on the publication committee for the journal, and I are combing through all the old journals that we have. We had them all digitized, and we're pulling out pictures and information about FSNE over the last 50 years. And I'm going to give you a preview of that in December, of some of the things that we did. It's amazing what FSNE has done over the past 50 years, how we've changed, how we have not changed. So you're going to hear a little more about that come December from me. Yeah.
So there will be no show and tell in December?
I wasn't planning on it, but what do you think, Dana?
When we usually do that, a lot of folks sign up, so that's usually at least an hour. I don't know if we want to have a separate holiday party on Zoom. Well, I don't know what your feelings are about that, but the first Sunday in December was scheduled to be John's presentation.
We also have to have an annual meeting and announce the results of the election and some other stuff. So there'll be some administrative stuff too that would be happening on that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be tight, I think. Yeah. But we'll see.
So I don't think so, Vlad.
Okay.
Next month in November, don't have my calendar up. It's the first Sunday in November, which is the 5th. Collector and historian Rob Niederman is going to join us talking about unusual cameras and unusual solutions to various photographic problems. He's got an incredible collection. I put his website there in the chat, at the top of the chat. I'll paste it in again. But that will be November 5th. And thank you again, Vlad, for an excellent presentation. I always learn so much. And your resources are great. Maybe we could have like a bibliography of all of your presentations and all of your resources someday. That would be incredible.
I usually put all the sources, references that I used for at the end of my presentation, so you can probably find them on YouTube.
Yes, I saw that slide. So we really appreciate you you joining us tonight, and thank you so much. If everyone wants to give Vlad another round of applause.
My pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's always a pleasure talking to FSNE.
That's great.
You can switch back to gallery view for a minute or so. How are we doing on time, Ben?
I think we're doing right on time. So if anyone wants to like bring up any conversation or even just say goodnight, I think it's a great time to do so. Thank you, Vladimir.
You're welcome. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, Kathleen.
I want to thank Cyril again.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, he's the one who actually made this presentation happening.
Let's say no more. I'm so glad it all worked out, and thank you, Vladimir. I totally agree with Dana. It's a great presentation, and I'm so glad I joined. Tuned in. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so I think that's it for this evening. Thanks everyone for coming. You can always visit FSNE.org to find out more about membership or other presentations that we have coming up, as well as FSNE's history, as John was talking about. There's a great archive available. Just one quick note, I think there was a typo in Vladimir's name in snapshots. So I'm going to type his name into the chat.
I didn't notice that. What was that?
I think there was no D.
Oh, I actually collect mistyping of my first and last name.
Ooh.
Yeah, the best one was from dry cleaners. They spelled my last name with a deafness. Khazan. So
I understand completely.
It's good to see everyone. So thanks all for coming. This will be archived on our YouTube channel in a week or two. You can find us there by searching YouTube for FSNE virtual meetings. And you can go back through time. We began this during the pandemic. So we've had about 3 years of these presentations now. I guess 4. And Vladimir has actually done 4 presentations for us. This is number 4. So please go back and check those out as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, John.
thank you.
Thanks, Dana. Great job as always.
All right.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Vladimir.